Gas chambers were built, death camps were guarded, daily quotas of corpses were produced, with the same efficiency as the manufacture of appliances. These inhumane policies may have originated in the mind of a single person, but they could only have been carried out on a massive scale if a very large number of people obeyed orders. Is it even justified to prioritize obedience to authority over personal moral convictions? Do we have the personal strength to overcome such a situation? What will we do if we face the same moral dilemma? Looking for the answer for these questions, psychologist Stanley Milgram carried out an experiment, revealing chilling truth about human behavior. The ease with which ordinary people can be led to commit unthinkable acts under the command of authority. His experiments simulated a scenario where participants were instructed to administer increasingly severe electric shocks to a group of people whenever they answered questions incorrectly. The experiment involved three roles: the participants who administered the shocks, the subjects who pretended to receive them, and the supervisor as an authority figure in a lab coat. Unknown to the participants, the subjects were actors and the shocks were fake. Milgram wanted to understand how far individuals would go in obeying instructions that conflicted with their moral beliefs, particularly when the authority figure insisted on continuing despite the apparent suffering of the subject. During the experiment, whenever the subject answered incorrectly, the participants were instructed to administer increasingly painful shocks by the supervisor. As the voltage rose, so did the distress of the subjects, who eventually begged to stop. What do you think the result would be? Before the experiment, most people predicted they would refuse to harm someone. Yet, when faced with the cries of pain from the subjects, reality diverged sharply from expectation. Shockingly, despite hearing the subjects scream and protest, a significant majority of participants continued to administer shocks as ordered by the supervisor without hesitation. The participant exhibited visible signs of distress, sweating, trembling, and showing signs of anguish as they wrestled with their conscience. The logical next step would then be to demand that the experiment be terminated. In reality, this rarely happened. Despite their reservations, most people continued to follow the orders of the experimenter and inflict progressively greater shocks. You may want to believe that the subject who volunteered were sadistic monsters, but no, they were just a random group of people. Why didn't the participants administering the shock feel guilty and just opt out of the experiment? Well, the participants knew that what they were doing was wrong, yet most, instead of pulling out from the experiment, developed a coping mechanism to justify what they were doing. This included transferring the moral responsibility by coming up with a defense that I was just following orders. The moral sense or conscience of the person is not lost, but is transformed into a wish to please the superior. Believe in a greater, worthy cause. Just like in the past, when war were waged over religion and political ideology, in this case, the cause was science. Dehumanizing the subjects. Their government don't know the answer, so they deserve to be punished. Such impunging of traits and characteristics is commonly used by tyrants to get rid of whole group of people. They're not worth much, so who really cares if they're eliminated? Reorienting their sense of morality so that they felt duty and loyalty not to those they were harming, but to the person giving the orders. The subject cannot extract themselves from the situation because, amazingly, it would have been impolite to go against the wishes of the experimenter. Why are we like this? To understand this mindset, let's take the example of a soldier. Trainee soldiers are put in an environment separate from normal society. They're made to think in terms of friends and enemy. They believe that they are fighting for a great cause. They are instilled with a love of duty and a tremendous fear of disobeying orders. Although its purpose is to provide the recruit with military skills, but The fundamental aim is to break down any residue of individuality and selfhood. They are made to become agents for a cause, rather than free thinking individuals. And as the people stop being human beings and become collateral damage, same can happen to an average person. Culture has taught us how to obey authority, but not how to disobey authority that is morally reprehensible. This tendency evolved for simple survival purposes. Man is a communal animal and does not want to rock the boat. We need hierarchies with leaders and followers to get things done. For us, worse than the guilt of harming others who are defenseless, it seems, is the fear of being isolated. We are told from a very young age that it is wrong to hurt someone, yet we spend the first 20 years of our life being indoctrinated with what to do, so we get used to obeying authority. What are the effects of living a life like this? When we live a life like this, we stop being ourselves and instead become an agent for some other person or thing. Moreover, by saying yes throughout our life, we don't have the courage to say no when no needs to be said. Eventually, we lose the capacity to say no entirely. History is filled with tragic examples of atrocities that highlight the devastating consequences of unquestioned obedience to authority figures. The My Lai massacre during the Vietnam War saw American soldiers slaughtering hundreds and thousands of civilians, including women and children, due to blind adherence to military orders. The guards of the Soviet gulags and Iraq's Abu Ghraib prison engaged in severe human rights abuses under the guise of duty. The Rwandan genocide, fueled by state propaganda and orders, led to the systematic slaughter of tens of thousands of Tutsis and Hutus. Or, the Cambodian genocide, under the Khmer Rouge, resulted in the deaths of millions through dehumanization and ruthless purges. These events depict the catastrophic outcomes when individuals fail to challenge immoral directives from those in power. Instead of standing up, we compromise and reorientate our moral values. Prioritize duty to authority over empathy for others and shift responsibility away from individuals, ultimately diminishing personal autonomy. But there are a few who resist. Disobedience is difficult. Milgram noted that there was a big gap between protesting that harm was being done and actually refusing to go on with this experiment. Yet, this is the leap made by those few who do disobey authority on ethical or moral grounds. These people assert their individual beliefs despite the situation, whereas most of us bend to the situation. Individuals who resist authority typically exhibit strong moral conviction, courage, and a sense of personal responsibility. True resistors understand the gap between protest and action, knowing that true resistance demands decisive action. And this differentiates between expressing discomfort and becoming a hero willing to risk everything. Heroes like Mahatma Gandhi and his non-violent resistance, or Nelson Mandela's fight against apartheid, or simple people trying to stand for what they believe in, like Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her bus seat in Montgomery, the powerful photo of the tank man of Tiananmen Square, or the person not doing the Nazi salute in 1938. In a world often defined by obedience to authority, the courageous few who dare to resist become a beacon of hope and change. They remind us that true heroism lies in the capacity to stand firm against moral wrongs, even when faced with immense pressure to conform. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.